so you guys don't miss a minute of it when we get started. And here we go. Everything seems to be working fine. Okay, so let me share the first presentation that we're going to go through today on the screen here, which is Report 11. Now, before we get started with this one, I'm also going to start our typical polling questions, right, to review what we have learned yesterday. I know we went through the reports with Cyril. Cass was also nice enough to not only be there, but also answer all your questions, and hopefully that was very useful for you. Those of you who could not participate in yesterday's session, I recommend you watch the recording because a lot of interesting questions were answered there today. Hopefully Cass will be able to log in today as well. If not, I hope that I can answer all your questions. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Liliana, for confirming you can hear me, and Monusco, Nicola as well, Amir. Thank you all. So let's get started first with the initial poll. I'm opening the poll now. You guys should have received an invitation to participate. So take 5 minutes you have to answer these 7 questions. And these all relate to yesterday's presentations. Some of them may seem repetitive, but again, they're the basic questions that you need to know the answers to, right? Like roles, right? And what types of reports you can see with what types of roles. So you have 5 minutes. Just make sure you answer the poll before the time runs out. And again, we'll share these answers with you as we always do tomorrow morning. Absolutely. So I see, just in case anyone else has joined in, please take, you have another 3.5 minutes to answer the questions in the poll. I think 5 minutes is more than enough, right, for these questions that we have. There's 7 in total. It should give you more than enough time. And somewhat it trains you to answer these multiple choice questions quickly. So when you come to one of our workshops in Valencia, or we go to visit you in your mission, answering the online occurs quite fast. Okay, I see 38 are in progress, and 2 have finished, 3 have finished now. Very good. So still another almost 3 minutes. Hello, Cass. Good to see you. And thanks, Daniel. I'll take a look at those questions that you're talking about, especially question 5. Well, I'll go over it. Again, you guys have 1 minute and 42 seconds. 23 people have submitted the answers to the questions. And as soon as we are done with this, we will get started with this report 11, which is Equipment Utilization Timeframe Current Cycle. And since this is a web intelligence report, what I want to go over as soon as I can that we couldn't do yesterday was how to schedule a recurrence in a report, right? How to have it sent to your email, how to save it in your favorites. These things that I believe yesterday we talked about them. We tried to do it in the system, but somehow I think there was a problem with Umoja in general yesterday at around the time that I started taking control of the session. Hopefully today my magic touch with these reports does not affect the performance, and we can all go through them easily. So we have another 35 seconds or so. So if you haven't submitted, make sure you submit. If by any chance you can't get to answer these questions now, don't worry. As usual, we will send you the questions and answers in an email tomorrow, as we do every day. Okay, and the poll is now complete. Give me a couple of seconds while it loads, and I'll share it with you. I want to take a look at question 5, as Daniel was commenting on something related to question 5. Let's see. I'm sharing the correct answers with you guys now as well, and I'm taking a look at question 5, right? Can web intelligence reports be saved to your favorites? To your favorites folder in BI, or do they have to be saved to your desktop? Okay, so in a way, yes, maybe the answers there are quite brief with the yes or no, but mainly what I want you guys to remember is that yes, web intelligence reports can be saved, right, in your favorites folder in BI. We did not save them in the desktop folder. Of course, you could export them and you could save them in your desktop, but the document itself, the report itself, right, to save it directly in the BI tool in your favorites folder. So in this case, the answer was yes. You know, it can be saved into your favorites, and or do they have to be saved to your desktop? So of course I could have expanded a little more on that answer. So yeah, thanks Daniel. And tomorrow when I send these to you guys, I'll expand a little more on that yes or no. Okay, thanks again. Okay, very good. So let's get started now with report 11. Let me just clear up some things here so I can see what I'm doing. And let's go with the first screen. As we've been seeing so far these days, we have the business need for this report, okay, which is improve the utilization of the serialized property items, promote first in, first out commodity distribution strategy. Okay, what this report measures is the percentage of total time serialized property items have been in use during the current reporting cycle. Okay, so we're going to be looking at how that works in the report itself. And our scope, of course, equipment, non-expendable property, records in stock, excluding inactive equipment, items in transit, and items pending write-off. So you'll see when we look at the report and we check out the numbers for our equipment, these numbers are obviously excluding inactive equipment, items in transit, and items pending write-off. And the target KPI is set at 80%. All right, so I believe in this screen, as we share with you, you'll have this in your inbox tomorrow morning as well, so you can review it. Let's take another look at the job aid and some of the elements in the job aid. This can be the enterprise roles again. If you have realized already, the enterprise roles are always the same, right? BI 54 for the basic user, BI 55 analytical user, and 56 for the power user. To view this web intelligence report with the BI 54 is more than enough. Now again, the job aid repeats what we have seen before. The report calculates KPI percentage of total time serialized items have been in use during the current cycle. Okay, and why this is measured like this: to improve the performance utilization of equipment and the utilization of serialized property items. Okay, also this report provides a calculated result by business area and maintenance plant, as we will see later on. And we'll get into this part here of the maintenance plant when we see the prompt. Okay, so once again, a quick review that this report selects equipment that had a change in the system or user status before the to date. So you'll see that when you're selecting the date range, you understand the date range that you're adding, what that means in terms of the results you're going to get in your report. Is that the to dates that you're setting, right, will select all equipment that had a change in the system or user status before that to date that you select in the prompt, which means that it's considering all equipment available in the business area at the to date, excluding, as we said before, all equipment in transit, written off, disposal in progress, deactivated, or deleted, which are excluded from the report. Let's see a little more, especially the formula applied to calculate this KPI, right? It's the sum utilization days divided by the sum duration days. And what does that mean? Utilization days, right? Total number of days an equipment is installed. Utilization is calculated summing all intervals of days between the date an equipment was installed and the date it was made available or returned to the warehouse. So again, when you're reading now the report, or when we're taking a look at it later, or you actually run it on your own, you're able to understand what these mean when you look at it. So the logic considers multiple activation, deactivation phases in the reporting cycle. Okay, so again, keep this in mind when looking at the formula, the key figures where it calculates the sum utilization days divided by the sum duration days. What they mean by utilization days is the below. And what they mean with the duration days is what I'm showing now in the screen. Equipment, total number of days subject to be in use. And this takes into account equipment that is acquired after from date. Number of days subject to be in use will start from the acquisition date. And if the equipment changes to another business area, number of days subject to be in use start at the date the business area was changed in the equipment master record. So I definitely recommend that you don't only review what is in this presentation. I just take key elements from the job aid itself that I was telling you guys throughout the sessions to take a look at, but also review the job aid itself. Take a good read at it while you're going through the report to understand what you're looking at, as it's very well explained there. Yes. Any question? Mohammed? If not, I'll just mute you myself, okay? If you guys want to speak up, let me know in the chat or simply raise your hand. In the if you look at the participants list that you may also have, you should see a hand symbol. Just click on it and I'll check through the participant list to see somebody wishes to speak up and cannot unmute themselves. All right, if not, just write it in the chat as well and we'll be taking a look at this chat. Okay, so we'll move on with the presentation. And again, as we do in every session, where to find the report. This is the one we're looking at here, Report 11, Web Intelligence Report. And we usually analyze the prompt before we get started with the report, which is the date from, the date to, in a brief explanation, date from which you want to calculate, and present day by default. Okay, so when you launch the report, you'll see that the prompt automatically defaults the today's date as the date to. Okay, so you're pretty much calculating, you're backtracking when you're calculating here. Then again, we also have business area and maintenance plant as the other one. But here I wanted to mention, and now that I know Cass is also attending the WebEx session, is the maintenance plant field, right? I believe it should be planning plant, correct? Even though now the report still shows maintenance plant. Cass, I don't know if you're there, you can hear me. Okay, so let me unmute you. Better now, Cass?
Yeah, can you hear me?
All right. Yes, now I can.
Yeah, we base everything on planning plan. So this
Okay.
is one of the things we might have to change. But you could leave it blank.
Yes, that one can be left blank. It is not necessary, but at least to understand the difference, right? Those who usually deal with the maintenance plans or planning plans, right? The difference between the two when you're checking the report. It's not necessarily the plant that's going to be performing the maintenance, but that one who's going to be planning any action to be taken with a piece of equipment, let's say. Okay, Cass. So I'll just, if you want to speak up again, let me know. I'm not sure you have. I have you twice. I have you dubbed here, one with a phone type. So I'm going to mute one of them. Okay, now I know which one you are. And can I just leave you unmuted and you speak up whenever you wish to?
Sure.
Okay. So let's go on to the report itself and the exercise, brief exercise that I have prepared for you guys as well. So let me exit the presentation. Okay, and go to the report itself. Okay, so let's check out report 11. We'll double click and see what this report looks like in the prompt as well, as we've just seen in the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so again, you see, as we were mentioning before, the date 2 is already defaulted to today, and the date from. So let's see what I have in my exercise here for report 11, and I say that it is, we're doing the 1st of January, 2018. Okay, so we can select that. Very good. And then again, business area, we could just leave this blank as well, just like the maintenance plant. As you see, they're not required fields. So we'll do that just so you can see that there's something very interesting about this report, and you see the minute I click on it and it runs, that we're also going to be able to visualize graphs immediately, depending on the total number of equipments that are in this report, and as well as the percentage of usage for this equipment, and how these graphs will vary according to what we filter and what we do not filter. So here we go. I think this is probably large enough for everyone to see. If not, once we start filtering, you'll see how it becomes easier to distinguish. So we have here on our left the business area description, also with the total number of equipment by business area, and the DFS KPI utilization percentage as well. And that, if you scroll down, you see that there are more pages that we can check out. And we're going to go through the pages because eventually there's also another section for the maintenance plant or planning plant. But take a look to your right where we have the two bar charts here, one indicating the percentage of usage. Actually, if you just scroll over the report or any of the columns, you'll see how it says the KPI percentage usage per business area. If you just go over them, I know it's quite difficult to read when all of them are mixed up together, but you can actually filter one by one as we're about to do in a little bit. And then here at the bottom, total number of equipment, also in bar charts and percentages as well. Okay, so let's move on to the next pages so you see how it changes, especially the column on the left. See, we have another section that begins here. Now we don't have the charts on the side, but we do see the maintenance plant description here, or the planning plant description. Now what's interesting about this report is that in the business area, there's a drill down capability of the report that just by clicking on one of the business areas, automatically the report shows you what planning plants or maintenance plants, as you can see in this report, are assigned to that business area. So right now we can't see it by looking at it like this, but we'll filter out and we'll use one of the missions so you see what I'm talking about, and you also see how the report changes. So if we remember how we did the filtering in a Web Intelligence report, we clicked on the filter bar and then we selected what we want to filter. In this case, I can filter the business area and select it. Okay, I thought somebody wanted to speak up. And here we can just select, for example, MINUSCA in this case. And as you see, now the report will simply show us the business area for MINUSCA, the total equipment for MINUSCA, the KPI utilization here in percentage, and also the maintenance plant that is assigned to it, right? The ones here, UN support mission in Libya, and also here, the one below. Okay, so you see, just by clicking on one of these, now I'm going to filter two of them so you see the difference between clicking on one or the other and how the maintenance plants change as well. If you take a look at the right, you also have the percentage in graph form and the bar chart here as well with the amount of equipment that is here in MINUSCA. Remember, the one that is excluded are in the PowerPoint, as I was sharing before. There are a number of equipments that are excluded from here, so this is not considering all the equipments. Remember to take a look at the job aid to understand which ones are considered in this report. Somebody's saying the voice is disappearing in the chat. Okay, don't think it's the case for everyone. Okay. All right, Sammy. So question from Sammy there is, why Libya? So why Libya in as a maintenance plant for MINUSCA? Sammy, if you want, I can also unmute you. Okay, yes. So maybe, Cass, if you're still there, I unmuted you. If this report is showing us that Libya shows as the maintenance plant or planning plant for MINUSCA, right? The data is being pulled from somewhere specifically, so they're wondering why.
It's probably in the equipment record. You could have a MINUSCA item under maintenance, a different maintenance plan. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
This is an issue that we find even with business area. Business area is something that is recorded in the equipment record. Business area is usually inherited from the funding used to buy it. But if you get a transfer of an equipment, let's say, from one to another, and business area isn't changed, you'll find, I mean, as an example, I think I remember seeing some Brindisi items in Unifil, which means it may have been SDS or UN Reserve or something like that. So this is one of the issues that we talk about, where in Galileo it used to be very straightforward, but we would use destination location as the identifier. But now the entire system is sort of open to data quality issues because things aren't mandatory. And this speaks to why we are sort of trying to do this DFS reporting entity enhancement to these reports. If you were to filter for UNLB, for example, you'll see, let's see if it's UNLB. Yeah, I noticed their utilization rate is extremely small. Why? Because UNLB has the same business area as SDS, UN Reserve Ipsis. So SDS doesn't move. It's not going to have any utilization, and neither is UN Reserve. So this report, for example, can't function for Brindisi until we do the next enhancement of what we call DFS reporting entity, which is to look at, we have a sort of a cascading level of logic where we use fund centers and storage locations to identify who has what. But this report doesn't have that yet. That functionality we're going to have by, I think, November. So these reports are going to be changing, as I keep mentioning.
Okay, thanks, Casa. I think that's quite clear. And we've seen, I don't know if people have noticed, but the minute we pull or we filter by one of the business areas and simply click on it, we have all the maintenance plants that are somewhat assigned to the equipment or are in the equipment records, and that's why they show below it. So Sammy, in that case, we did filter by MINUSCA initially, by business area, but those maintenance plants that are assigned to it or appear in the equipment records for MINUSCA will also be displayed below. So thanks, Cass, for the explanation. I'm just going to mute you and keep you muted because there's a lot of echo coming from where you are. And so anytime you want to speak up, just either put it in the chat or I'll just unmute you when there's a question that we need your help with. Okay, very good. So for the rest of us here, you probably did not appreciate the change here when we added UNLV, but what this report offers us, for example, if I select UNMIC in this case, we see that it seems like there are no maintenance plants for UNMIC, but as soon as you click on the business area, the report loads the associated or linked maintenance plants to UNMIC in this case. Right, so that works for the report we had before. So let's say we had 3 or 4 missions originally in our business areas in our prompt, and we ran the report. Just by clicking on them, this bottom section for maintenance plant would be changing depending on which one we have clicked on. If you read through the job aid, you'll see that this is one of the features of this report, the drill down capabilities that it has. You can also export this Web Intelligence report, remember? We also explained how to do that by clicking here on this icon, export, and we could export this into PDF or Excel. Remember, we went through it, quite easy. Just clicked on OK, selected the type of file we wanted, and we would have this in Excel or PDF format. But also remember again that if we have filtered UNMIC here, when we export, all we're getting is UNMIC as well. So in order to have all the data we want, you would have to keep the, let's say, unfiltered, the report unfiltered, and then you could work on filtering all of these later on in your Excel report, or look at it in your PDF. We also learned about using the goggles, and we started seeing the capability of saving these reports. If you remember yesterday, we were clicking on saving these reports, for example, and I have saved a couple of them so we can play with them now and schedule some recurrences. So remember, we clicked on save, and what we did save for was to add it to our favorite folder so we can have it there in order to access this report with a specific prompt that we have already filled in. And then we would just have to select it from our favorites folder. But remember, as soon as you click on Save As, what first appears here is the tab for public folders, and the one we want is the one for favorites. So remember to always select your favorites, and then in the favorites folder, make sure you keep the file name or give it the name that you wished it to have. If you see here save, you can only save as Web Intelligence, and then of course you just save the file. If I wanted to, in this case, I can write here Bryan1, and if by any chance this one today does not work, I have others saved. But you see now the report has changed here, and it's called Bryan1. Okay, if I rerun my prompt, these are the fields that I will have the next time I run it. For those of you who mentioned about the variant, right, and the fact that we didn't do the variant yet, remember at the top here, if I wanted to keep these, and the next time I run this report, I just want this to appear, could always click where you see here, create prompt variant, and also give it a name. In this case, I could always call this one as well Bryan1, and click OK, and we'd have Bryan1 here. So you would have to eventually close the report, right? We can save it. You would have to close the report and then rerun it to be able to see the impact that this has. So for example, I can cancel this and close Bryan1 in this case. Let's go, let me close this one as well, and just go back to my documents. So when I restart report 11, again, my prompt will begin, and now there's nothing here. And what I should have is one Bryan here in this case, which hasn't saved. Okay, so maybe when I did it next, let me try that again. Let me ask for a date here and not go too far back, maybe May. Okay, and I'll run it only for the business area that I'm interested in. Okay, in this case, we'll add it now. And here we go. Okay, we'll execute that. And while the report loads, I'll go to Documents. Remember, you have your tab called Folders, and you also have your tab called My Documents. To access any of the reports that you have saved, whether they're Web Intelligence reports or they're analysis workspaces, if you click on your favorites, you can see them all here. See, Bryan 1 is here, the one I just saved, and as well as others I have tested with. So take a look, see here, type Web Intelligence, Analysis Workspace, and so on. If you select this one, this first one, Bryan, Web Intelligence, and you right-click on your mouse, you'll see that there's a number of fields that you can select from, and one of them is called Schedule. If we do that for Analysis Workspace, we'll see that we don't have one called Schedule. So you can schedule your Web Intelligence reports, but not the Analysis Workspace. So if we select it and we click on Schedule, so you see how this one works, this will load a new screen that'll tell us how we want to name our instance. If you see here on the left, we have a number of fields we're going to go selecting one by one. For example, I can name this one Bryan 2. And then the next option will tell me what recurrence I want to give this report. So let's say if I just want to receive it now, to run the object now, and when I'm done filling in all the fields and I click on Schedule, it'll automatically be sent to either my Outlook inbox or my BI inbox, depending on which one I select. I can also say I want the recurrence once, hourly, daily, weekly, monthly. So you can choose when you want this recurrence to occur. Now, I do have to remind you that whatever it is that you schedule, let's say you schedule it hourly, and you never stop this recurrence, this will continue, and hourly you will be receiving it until you actually stop this recurrence. So it's very important that if you do schedule a report, and let's say you schedule it hourly or daily, you are going to get it hourly and daily. So eventually you'll have to stop it yourself. And I'll show you that as well. So let's say in this case, I'm only going to do it once, right? And I'll say that the start time, maybe we can do it at 40 and we'll check it later to 40, and the end date and time, same thing. We have the date here, which is July 12th. And then again, be careful here because somehow it tends to say 2028. So we can just go and type 2018. So in this case, I've just run the object once, start time and end time, and the date. Again, you don't have to worry about the prompt, but we can select the format that we want to receive it in. Okay, and thanks for that reminder, Daniel. The time that we selected before and the recurrence, right, we see here it's 2 o'clock, and thanks for reminding me, Daniel, is the Valencia time or Brindisi time. So make sure that when you're scheduling this, you know that the time that is shown here is not the time at your mission, but it's the time in here in Valencia or in Brindisi. Okay, so make sure you select your format, whether it's Excel or Web Intelligence or any other format. In this case, we can do Excel. And then again, you don't have to worry about these other fields and just simply go into destination. And here, default enterprise location, when we click on the drop down, we have your BI inbox. BI also has an inbox. I'll show you where it is right now and how probably if we have enough time, how you can send it there. But what I wanted to show you is just how to send it to your own email. So in this case, you can, I'm just going to write my email twice here from to, and we can give it a name. And here, there you go, and schedule it. Once you click on it, it'll be sent. In this case, it'll be sent at the time I told it to, so in 5 minutes I should have it in my inbox. But if you see the screen that has popped up now, where it says History Bryan 1, you have all the information related to the report that you have scheduled. If you select it and right-click, you also can do more things to it. For example, you can delete it, you can pause it, you can run it right now, or you can reschedule it directly from here. You also have other options here at the top, other icons, information about an instance. You also have the pause an instance option, and then here again, rerun an instance. Okay, so you also have here more actions, which are the same as the ones we have in our icons, and the same options we have when we simply just right-click. So this is definitely something to take a look at when you have some time and work on the rescheduling of any of the reports. We'll take a look at my Outlook inbox in a minute and see if I have received this email. So I can just click on the X here and go back to the report 11 now that it has loaded. Also, again, there's an icon in the Web Intelligence reports here called History, that if you simply click on it when it's active in the report, you can edit these recurrences directly from here. Okay, so that's another option that you can use, this icon here called History. I'm going to check the chat really quick because I believe some people have been asking questions. Cass, yes, let me unmute you. All right, Cass, you're unmuted.
Address the other questions, and then I'll get back.
Sorry, Cass, we just heard the end of that.
I was just suggesting to go ahead and address the other questions, and then I'll get to my point.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I have a question here. Bryan, can you please repeat this step and also mention which date do we need to put in the date from field? Okay. Now, Ikram, the step that I have to repeat is the one in the prompt. Just to explain that to me, or in the chat while I look at this other question where it's, can you send the recurring reports to someone else? Yes, of course. I just sent it to myself just so you would see it in my inbox when the time comes. But of course, anyone's email you can send it to, anyone's Outlook inbox, and also BI inbox if of course they have access to BI. But it doesn't necessarily have to be yours. Okay, and Ikram, if you could just please explain what step you would like me to repeat, the date and the prompt. Okay, so again, we can refresh the prompt. Remember that the date to, in this case, is always defaulted to today, and the date from is the date we want to start tracking from. So in this case, I've just added, I believe, 1st of May, 2018. So the date from is the date you want to start tracking from. You want to start tracking what this report is actually providing to you, right? Which is the utilization time frame. So if you want a month or 2 months or since the beginning of the year. Okay. Exactly. So it's the idea if we put the date when our KPI period starts. Sure, you can test this report, but again, remember that the date that you're putting in the from is always where you want to start tracking from. So of course, it's really up to you where you want to start tracking from. But then again, remember the date to should always be defaulted to today, and then add your business area. All right, so I believe, let me see if now I can launch another report here. Again, your My Documents. So to go back to your folders, you can go here. But before that, I wanted to show you where to find your BI inbox. So if you're under My Documents and we click on the inbox, you can also see that I could have sent these reports or also Excel files to the BI inbox, which is right below the My Favorites under the My Documents tab. If I click on Folders, we're back to our reports. You can also execute this report again and see if by any chance, see, there you go. So now when I ran the report again and I go here to available prompt variants and you click on the drop down, you have Bryan 1. and this is the variant I created before. Okay, remember I first clicked on the create prompt with the prompt filled in completely, then I saved it, and now it's here, but you have to rerun the report one more time. Okay, so you see once I select Bryan, it already populates all the fields with the information that I had under the variant Bryan 1. Okay, Zaya, would you please advise if we can to this report? Sorry, Zaya. If we can add different additional queries, including details. Okay. So if we can add different additional queries, including details, equipment specification. Okay. So that's definitely a good suggestion. Generic description as well. I'm sure, again, like Cass was mentioning on Friday, we're going to go through an Excel in terms of where these reports are at in terms of development and what's coming. So eventually, thank you for the suggestion, Zaya. I see you keep adding more things, barcode, serial number, vendor name. Okay, so yes, all that was definitely useful, and we'll also let the team know. Thanks for suggesting that. And even maybe at one point an analysis workspace report. So we'll wait for Friday to see the development on these reports. Okay, so I believe that everything I wanted to cover in terms of the web intelligence, what the report looks like, what it covers, what is specific about it. Remember, clicking on the business area will provide the maintenance. Now, of course, and that one didn't work that well. And also the fact that you can send a report to your inbox or schedule it, and then now that it's already 2:42, I could check in my inbox to see if I actually have received the email. So I'm going to drag my inbox here and see that, yes, this report, Barrachina, hope it works, report has arrived. It arrived here at 2:40 when I scheduled it in Excel format. So as you can see, that works. Now, if I would have scheduled it hourly, every hour I would have received that report. And again, remember, you can send it to someone else. It doesn't have to be your inbox. And let me go back to Cass. Yes, Cass.
Before you move on to the report, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the results in this report. Right
now, let me
now,
pull it back up. You can continue speaking. I'll just pull the report up so people can follow.
Okay. So right now, we do this manually in ECC. And we do it by extracting transactions, everything is manual, and we sort of publish the results. And one of the things that we have found, for example, is, as you know, when we decommissioned Galileo and we converted all our holdings, there were a lot of expendables that got serialized. And in Excel, we manually take that into consideration by filtering them out. But what we find is that those serialized items, those newly serialized items, impact the results of this report sort of negatively. Because before they have no history. They have no history of issuances or anything. So don't be surprised if this report is showing for your mission lower than you expected. It's a known issue, and it's things that we are working through.
Okay, thanks, Cass. So please, sorry that I'm muting you. It's just that there's a lot of background noise when I unmute you. So just write in the chat, and I'm paying attention to it every minute or so I won't forget you.
Okay.
All right, so I think we've seen what we needed to see from report 11 here, the Web Intelligence report, and what I wanted to go over with you was, again, to save your report. The reasons that you can save your report, well, just to keep it under your documents, right, under your favorites, to access it, add your own variant to each one of these reports. So have 3 or 4 reports with different variants pulling different data. Again, we also save this report so we can schedule this report. We can schedule web intelligence reports, but we cannot schedule the analysis workspaces. Remember, we can also export these reports, but be careful. If you're filtering here by mission, then that's what you're going to get when you export it. Also, you can do it as a PDF. You can also email it directly to yourself. The only thing with this feature is if we send to email here directly, again, we can simply write your email or someone else's email. But if you see the option to add if it's going to be an Excel report or not. So when you send it directly like this, what it does is it sends it as a web intelligence report. So you'd be better off sending it to maybe your BI inbox so you can view this report, or to someone else's BI inbox. Because if you send it like I'm doing now to my Outlook inbox, I'm going to receive it as a web intelligence report. And maybe I can show you guys because I did it earlier as well. And I believe we have one here. Yes. The report looks like this, and of course you cannot open it directly from your Outlook inbox. So be careful with sending this email directly to your Outlook inbox, because it does so as a web intelligence report. All right, so that's all I wanted to cover with web intelligence reports. I think that's what we needed to know, the things that we were missing, right? The creation of the variant, scheduling, saving, exporting, and so on. If any questions on that, also let me know. Write it in the chat or speak up. Okay, thanks. Yes, Daniel, the web intelligence formats do not work in Outlook. That's why, as I was mentioning, when I got it in my inbox, it comes in as a strange sort of document that you can't open. So, of course, I would send those to your BI inbox so you can open them without a problem. As you can see here in my BI inbox, I actually do have web intelligence reports that I can open and use directly. So if you're planning on emailing yourself one of these web intelligence reports, make sure that you're sending it to your BI inbox. Okay, so let's move on now to our next report. Okay, very good. Thanks, Daniel. We'll move on to our report 10, which is the one that's appearing on screen here. Provisional R&I process timeline. And again, we're going to go over some of the basic information that has been retrieved from the job aid itself, or that Cass was nice enough to share with us, as are the business needs, how this report is measured, and also the scope itself. I'm reading the chat 1 second here. Yes, thanks, Cass, for the reminder. I believe I've mentioned it already. The analysis workspaces cannot be scheduled. So remember, only the web intelligence. When I was right-clicking on the reports, as you could see before, and I can show you that now later. Again, we did not have the option to schedule when we were looking at the analysis workspaces. So now we're looking at this report. Let me go back quickly here. We're looking at report number 10 now. And this is an analysis workspace report. And what this one is covering, and again, sorry, it's going a bit, I can't click on it here. So what this one is measuring, right? So average time needed to record virtual goods receipt of P&E, expressed as average time, okay? And this is important. The average time between the actual date of transfer of ownership, as per Incoterms, of course, and the date of recording of the virtual goods receipt in the system. So this report will be measuring specifically this. And when we take a look at it, the good thing about these reports that we've been sharing throughout these WebEx sessions is that everything seems to be done for you, right? You execute this report and automatically you get exactly what this report was meant to be for, was created for. So just by executing this report, or the one we saw yesterday or the one we saw on Monday, what you're getting is already what you need. Now you can play around with it a bit more, like you can do with other reports, but really what it's meant to measure and it's meant to do is already done for you. So we'll see that when we pull this report or run this report, it's the same case. And still you can play around, get more data. That's why it's an analysis workspace, and see things that you wish to see that are not there by default. Okay, let's see now again. Scope, right? Again, fixed asset records, and the scope also we'll see later on in the slide, virtual receipt, okay? As this report considers only the virtual receipts and not the physical receipts, and the target KPI is set at 15 days. Okay, so let's remember what this report measures is the average time, right, between the actual date of transfer of goods of ownership and date of recording of the virtual goods receipt in the system. Okay, again, from the job aid itself, one more time, the time needed to record virtual receipt of P&E and Umoja. So that's what this report measures. And it's how it's expressed, right, the time between actual date of transfer and the date of recording. The KPIs, we'll see this, the exercise I have ready for today actually asks you to look at these 3 KPIs, count of fixed asset in transit and physically received, sum of current capitalized value in each status, and average R&I process timeline for each mission calculated in days. Once again, you also have a screenshot of the roles and the business need here, physically received equipment and equipment still in transit. And now we'll take a look at what this means with received and in transit. And when you read the report, you understand what's going on there. Actually, I've prepared a graph for each one of these KPIs that we can see in the analysis workspace. I believe that'll be quite interesting for those of you who are not familiar with it. Again, where to find the report? Report 10. Again, there's a web intelligence report, but since today we already had report 11, I thought it would be best to focus on the analysis workspace report. Okay, so now to keep into consideration a couple of slides here. The below conditions apply, right? And the logic selected to retrieve data from the report, and this is very important. Only fixed assets are included in the scope of this report. And if a fixed asset is received virtually and physically, and this is what I was mentioning before, only the R&I timeline for the first receipt is considered in the report. Okay. And Isma, your question, only BI user 55 and 56 can run this report. Okay, well, you're going to need at least a BI 55 to run this analysis workspace report. That, yes, for sure. You don't necessarily need a BI 56 to run this report, but a BI 55 to view the analysis workspace report. Okay, this next screen, again, most importantly, is the equipment in transit, so you understand what that means when you're reading the report, and physically received equipment. 2 very important words that are going to be in your report, and to understand what they mean is this. Transit is that the destination storage location is 9XXX, and there is a virtual goods receipt for which the second physical goods receipt is not yet completed. So basically, the destination storage location is for the virtual goods receipt, but the physical goods receipt is not yet completed. While for the physically received equipment, the destination storage location is not 9XXX, and the physical goods receipt is completed. So mainly that the physical goods receipt is completed, while in the other one it is not. But we'll see, because there's a little more detail to that in our next slide. You will see a field called in transit, one that we can drag to our rows, or one that actually, hello, yes? Okay, no, thought that was a question. So you will be able to see this field, and we'll check that out in a minute. But so you understand when you have this information on screen, received, you see here movement type is for virtual goods receipt. There's a subsequent physical goods receipt, or the movement type is for physical goods receipt, and there's a goods receipt document with no predecessor virtual goods receipt. So that's what that means when you start seeing data under received, while in transit, when the movement type is for virtual goods receipt and there is no subsequent physical goods receipt document. Okay. So mainly these 2, received and in transit, are those we have to understand once we look at our report, and then exclude when movement type is for physical goods receipt and there's a predecessor virtual goods receipt document. So quite important when we pull the report, which we're about to do, and maybe when we do visualize it, it becomes easier to understand. Again, the prompt is quite basic. We have here 3 fields. First one, receiving plant, plant receiving the assets. And the next 2, input date from and input date to, which is the date, a range of dates, right, to select to filter those assets received in a specific period. So the prompt is quite simple here. And the exercise I have planned for today in this report. So let's take a look at the report first. It's report 10, and we will execute this report. I'll take a look at the chat in the meantime, and nothing new there. All right. So here we go. We have our prompt. Again, I don't want it to be so big. Receiving plant. Let's see what I have in my exercise planned for you guys. And in this case, I'm selecting unmiss. Okay, so remember, click on the matchbox. We can directly write unmiss here and click on the goggles and says, oh, unmiss in key. So again, remember, very important, text or key, right? What you're going to select from the goggles. Don't forget this basic thing we covered on day 1. So we select unmiss. We say OK, and now we just have to add the input date from and input date to. So we're doing 1st of January. Again here, 2 arrows will have you skip in years, and the 1 single arrow will just have you skip by month. So again, here we'll go with January 1st, and then the input date here. We can add, in this case, I'm going to April, so I have a shorter range here. And this is the exercise, or at least what is shown in the job aid, so I decided to just stick to this. So again, what we're doing here is we have the receiving plant. Let's see, I think I'm moving this around. Okay, here it is, and we'll click on OK and run this report with this information. Now, if you remember from the first session, the analysis workspace reports look different from the web intelligence reports. Now, as I was mentioning before, these have been created for a reason, so as soon as this report launches, all the information that it's supposed to measure is already there, right from the get-go. Everything you've added in the prompt, like the receiving plant and the dates, will transform this data or pull the data that is required and give you exactly what this report is supposed to mention with the KPIs that you're supposed to have according to IPSAS, and also you can find in the job aid. So here you go. What I'm talking about is this, right? The report launches and it already looks like this. So the work is done for you pretty much. Here under plant, you have unmiss, and then under columns, there's a combination of key figures, like the measures that we have here, and also this field we were talking about, in transit, and why it's important. As you see here, we have the in transit field, which covers in transit and is separated here with received on the other side, and then a total result column. So in a way, 3 columns, 1 in transit, 1 received, 1 total result. And this is where it becomes important to remember what I was just showing you before when we were looking at this. Right? What does it mean received? What does it mean in transit? So you understand when you're reading this report what we're looking at. Let's take that out of the way. And here we go. We have in transit and received. Already we have the count of assets, our current APC, and also the KPI. So right there, we're already covering, right from the get-go and by default, what we were talking about before in terms of KPIs. Right? In this first job aid KPI, count of fixed assets, sum of current capitalized value, and average RNI process. So here we go. We see that we have this for those items in transit, and also the same thing for the items under received. Now, the good thing about the analysis workspace, and I believe we have a question here in the chat, let's see. Okay, but it's just a sample for training purpose, or by BI I will never have trace of expendables, I guess, coming from an FCA purchase order. Well, again, we can't really say what you will never have in these reports, because as Cass mentioned yesterday, on Friday, we're going to be talking about the development of these reports. This is really, let's say, I don't know if I want to say a beta version, but they're still in development. So your wish list can still come true. And I'm going to unmute Cass now and see if he can add something to this.
Yeah, no, this will never tell you expendables that you've received virtually. Remember, these reports are built for a specific purpose, and this purpose is the KPI on P&E. So it's not going to provide it for you.
Okay, thanks, Cass. So I think that answers that question. Thank you. And now another one here. Can the recognition date and the entry date be visible in the report? Okay, I will get to that in a second, Tony. And thanks for the answer. You're welcome. Thanks, Cass. So I'll mute you once again. And we're back to our report. So yes, Tony, we'll get to that in a bit. Maybe not exactly as you're asking, but we'll see how eventually the report has been created for a reason. So here it is, right? Displayed automatically based on the date range that you added and the prompt, but you can still play around with this. And remember, this is what makes the analysis workspace interesting and fun. So let's say you're not interested in having the in transit or received here in the columns, right? You want it in the rows. So you can simply drag it here. And now what you'll have here is a change of how you visualize the data, which will be split right from the beginning here in the rows between in transit and received, and then also your KPIs, current APC, and asset count. Again, remember, some of these fields already automatically provide totals, and if you don't want them, remember to click over the fields that are already there and make sure you hide the totals. We went over this on the first day, so I won't go over it slowly, but I'll do it quickly. And we'll see what else we can do in this report. Look at all the information that you have here on the left side, correct? This is what you have to look at. Not under measures, because these are all the KPIs that usually belong to the columns. You can always play around and also drag them to the rows. And what else we have? The account assignment, asset number, asset text, business area, currency, delivery. Here we have the entered on date, which will be very interesting. We'll see that in a bit. Equipment number, fund center, in transit, material document item, the ones that are canceled, the material itself. So you see there's quite a lot more information that you can start playing around with, dragging, dropping, and edit it the way you would like to see this report for yourself, right? You also have the storage location, STOs, type of delivery, and it's just a lot of things that you can experiment with. Of course, we don't have enough time in one session to go through all of these, but we're going to play around with a couple of them. But what I wanted to show you today is we're going to go back later on at the end of the session, or when I have another 15-20 minutes, and display these KPIs in a graph format, right? Inserting pie charts or column charts and things like that. So right now what we're going to do is just play around a bit with the fields that we have here on the left side, to see if some of these may suit your needs and to understand how they work and how they edit the layout of your report. So let's get unmiss out of the way, right? We don't need unmiss here because we already know from the prompt that this is what we're looking at. We're looking at unmiss. So let's get plant, and we put it in our background. Remember, again, your background doesn't mean that it's not part of your filtering, it's not part of the report. The data is still there. The only thing is you're not seeing it. It's not being displayed here, but it is still affecting your report. It's just in the background, as it says here. Now, this is a very useful tool when you're planning on having charts, right, bar charts or pie charts that you don't want too much information in them, right? You just want them to compare maybe count of assets with either the status in transit or received. So the less data you have here in the rows, the better you'll see the result of your pie chart or column chart. And the same thing happens with the key figures, right? You're better off just having one, right? Compare 1 to 1 instead of 1 to 3. You'll see that if you experiment with the reports, you'll see what I'm talking about, and we'll do that in a bit as well. So you can go back down here to the background and double click on plant and see that we have, in this case, just one plant unmiss, right? So I can just say okay and have that here, go back to the background. So unmiss is still affecting my report, even though you may not see it. Now just imagine you wanted to compare two plants at the same time. Well, all you would have to do is then go back to the prompt, because of course you can't just select another plant right from the filter and here in the receiving plant, you only have SS10. You click on the matchbox and you say, well, I would like to also see another plant. For example, maybe we can say, and let's use this, Unimid. Again, remember, make sure that we have text selected, goggles, and here we go. And now, by adding these two here and clicking on OK, the data in my report is now going to be affected by this second plant I have added. But I did this for a reason, so you guys see how I can still have Unimid and Unmiss together in my report, but only see the data for one of them, or only see what I'm interested in seeing once this processes. Okay, I'm take a look at the chat, and it looks good. All right, so here we go. Now, the way I know if the new plant I've added is affecting my report is, of course, if I return to the filter for plant. And now in the background again, I click on plant, and it'll open my section here, a window for the plant itself. And now I should see two. So yes, and both are selected now. So that means that the data I'm seeing here is being affected because now it's considering two plants instead of just one. Okay, in the exercise that we were looking at, I had one here. Let me get some things out of the way so I can see it clearly. We were doing unmiss, right? We're using unmiss. So I can take Unimid out and click on OK, and you'll see that some of these numbers and digits may change because of the data now is only considering unmiss and not Unimid. And we'll learn on Friday because I don't think we have enough time today, based on what I wanted to show you, that you can use the tabs that are in the bottom here in your report once this is done loading. And each one of these tabs could have a different type of analysis, right? Or depending on the filtering or the prompts that you have added to it. So the numbers here have changed now that they're not considering Unimid. You see, if you see here in the plant, you only have unmiss. So that's quite important. You can still play around with different data, but of course it has to be first added in your prompt. Okay, let's see what else we have here in this section that could be interesting for us. If you see here origin, again, always remember to expand the fields to see that you're selecting only the ones that do not have the plus sign or the expansion sign next to it. If I drag origin here to the rows, what is that going to tell us? If you guys review the job aid, which I recommend you do, you'll see that this is also explained what origin is, and as soon as it pops up, you'll see it. So it tells us the type, right? If it's a virtual receipt or a physical receipt in this case. So you have it right from here. So some of these fields are very interesting for you to keep testing, dragging, and dropping. Look at the job aid, see what's interesting for you, and use it in your report. Maybe you're interested in seeing it automatically when you export this into Excel. You want to show it to your supervisor, chief, or you want to share it with your colleagues, and you want them to know immediately in one look that still all these assets are virtual, but when some of them are in transit and some of them are still in received. So again, origin could be a very interesting field for you to use. For example, we can take origin out and now go and look for the assets. Maybe you want to know exactly what 12 assets are in transit and what 65 are received. So that can also be done by selecting asset text or asset number here on the side, and you'll see the difference between the two. If I scroll up again, we have asset number, asset text. So I'm going to go with text so we can all just read the type of asset it is. If I select asset number, what I'm getting is an asset number, exactly. So I'm dragging the asset text here. Okay, remember that this report is measuring the P&E items. Okay, I have a question here. Is this report in its calculation taking all POs with virtual RNI Incoterms or just the ZAST materials from the PO? Okay, can you add also the PO? So I believe you can also add the PO in this. I'm not sure if I saw it, PO item or PO number. So yes, that question, definitely there. And then in this report, in its calculation, taking all POs with virtual RNI Incoterms or just the ZAST materials from the PO. Okay, so it's only the P&E items, and again, it's just measuring those that those that have been either already posted, let's say in the posting date, and the ones that have been entered into the system. So really, I'm not sure, unless Cass wants to jump into that one, if it's also doing that. So in storage location 9,000. Okay. Here you go, Cass. You're unmuted, Cass.
Okay. I think that the report is looking at storage location 9,000. So if it's a fixed asset and it's in other words, I can't say that it's looking at a PO at a particular Incoterm as the logic behind the scenes of the report. I think our developers would have to specify that, but I don't think it's that complex. I think it's just saying, is it in 9,000? If so, when is the virtual goods receipt conducted?
Okay, exactly, right? So a little... Yes, sorry, Cass.
No, that we're relying on the system functionality that brings in P&E into the 9,000 storage locations, which are only for virtual goods receipts. And if they're there, then we pick it up.
Okay, I believe that clarifies it. Thanks, Cass. And I know, Cyril, you wanted to mention something as well. Hold on, let me unmute you there. Okay. We can't hear you yet. I don't know if you're still muted there.
Okay, it's better
now.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian. I just wanted to stress out the importance of the data element in the left, where you have the function unit. You were discussing also yesterday at the first session about the fact that there's no possibility to have to add additional data element. But the advantage of have the analytic workspace is, although you can have a report with 3 or 4, 5, 6 attributes, you have so many data elements, as Brian was showing, the origin, the plants, the store location, as Cass mentioned, that will allow you to build a report. So before looking at new data element, you have to go through all the analytic workspace report and see if what you really need are not there, and then maybe if it's missing, it's better maybe to enrich those reports and complement them and add the data element you want. So I really encourage you to go and look through all the data element available and trying to see if it meets your needs.
Thank you, Cyril. Okay, so definitely, as I'm doing right now, I dragged the asset text so we could see. In this case, they're not coming out very clear, but we're able to read, here you go, what is in transit, exactly, forklift, and what is received, right, the type of asset, forklift rough terrain, forklift diesel 4x2, armored vehicle, and the exact count of assets for each one of them. So of course, you guys should definitely take a look at what is here in the fields and what they offer you in terms of reporting capabilities. Let's say you're not interested in knowing the asset exactly, but you're interested in knowing the difference, right? Or the dates, the exact dates between when something was posted and when it was actually entered in Umoja, right? So that you have those dates here as well. And again, we're keeping here the in transit or received so we can see the difference. If you see here, those icons that have the clock sign, right? Let's say that there's a watch sign here with enter date on. Usually they give you dates, right? Digits. So if we drag this here, and we'll see we have 1 here and 1 at the bottom as well, with this sort of clock icon, you will now have the dates that these items here, these assets, have been entered on, okay? Entered into the system. And if you drag down, you also have the posting date. I see again the icon here with the watch. You can also drag that one. And maybe since the posting should come, the date of the posting should come first, maybe you can decide to put it before your entered on date. So again, remember, you can also manipulate what is driving your report, whether if it's in transit or received, the status, whether it's the posting date or the entered on date. And let me get some of these results or these totals out of the way. Remember to go to the whatever item you have dragged, right-click, and hide the totals so that you have a cleaner report or a cleaner view of your report. So in this case, and I'm not sure, Tony, if this is something you want to you wanted to look at, exactly this, the dates, right, and the difference of dates, so you can have a quick look in your report of those that are in transit and received and when exactly the dates were, when they were entered and when they were actually posted, and what is the difference. Remember, it gives you the date range here, the process timeline, but remember, and this is something that I skipped, but it's quite important. If you see the key figures here, we have 1, 2, 3 columns, but at the top of this one specifically, the one that says KPI, there's a sort of a calculator there. That means that this one was a calculation that was made, and the calculation, if you click on the calculator, shows you here what calculation there is, and it's calculating the RNI timeline divided by the asset count, and that's how we get this new column. So it's calculating an average of sorts, while the other ones do not have this calculator. Now if I double click on measures, key figures here, I can see that there's still a number of key figures I'm not selecting. So maybe you're not interested in seeing the KPI RNI process timeline formula or calculation, but you actually want to see just the RNI timeline and take the other one out. You can do that and click, and you'll see how now the new column that will load here as the key figure will not have this calculator icon there. Okay, and I'm reading you, Sammy, also. Thank you. Can you please add the PO and the STO? Okay, let's see. I'll do that one quickly because then, if not, I won't have time to do what I wanted to do in terms of graphs. Okay, so you see now this column in KPI is not does not have the, sorry, it's the RNI timeline that I have added, does not have the calculation or the calculator icon there. So it's up to you how you want to manage these reports. Okay, so we can take the posting date out. And again, I'm doing it quickly because right now the system is working well, but just as a reminder, we're going to go back to the auto update button, right? Because this may work quickly now or here in Valencia, but not where you are. So remember, we can just click on the auto update, gray out the window here, and start playing around with what we don't want and we want. See, now there's no loading time. So I'm still going to keep the in transit. I could actually even put it in the background if I want. I can also put back the timeline as it was, the KPI RNI process timeline. And I'm going to do what I've been asked by Sammy here, add the PO and the STO. Sure. So, and again, I'll take the in transit out since we already know that we have in transit and received. Maybe if we're interested in knowing exactly which ones are there, we'll put it back in the rows. And now we'll look at the STO, select it, drag it in, and the other one is the PO. Okay, so let's look for the PO. I know I saw it here. Yeah, it was right in front of me. PO item, PO number. So let's do the PO number and put it in there as well. Okay, so there we go. We have STO and PO number, and let's click on the auto update and see what our report is going to look like now with the information. Okay, so this is the information we'll have. Let me get rid of the totals. So probably what I would like to do here, maybe you want the PO number to drive your report instead of the STO. So you can just simply drag it above, see where the black line is, and now the PO number will go before the STO number, and that will be driving your report. And this is important when you're calculating subtotals, right? Our totals here will not affect the absolute total here at the bottom if you want to add a grand total. But if we have subtotals, as we do here, what is driving your report will definitely affect the results of it. So here we go. See, we have the PO number and the STO number. also subtotaled. All right, so I believe that's what we wanted to see, and maybe we can go back quickly to what I wanted to show you finally. So we still have a good 10 minutes. Maybe we can stay a couple of minutes longer if you guys don't mind, but I think it'll be fast enough to show you. So let me click on the auto update once again, just to clean this up quickly. And what I wanted to do is show you guys how to insert the graphs, and also have, I'm not inserting the plan, sorry, I'm inserting the in transit. Okay, and the KPIs were fine. Actually, the key figures were fine. The ones I want is the count assets, current APC, and KPI process timeline. Okay, so let's see. Let's get rid of these two, because now all I want is the count assets, right? So I'll click OK. And now when I click on the auto update, all I should see is the status in transit, whether they're in transit or received, and also the count of assets, which was one of the KPIs in the job aid, correct? So this is the way I can visualize this now. So 12 and 65. So let's say you would want to have insert a pie chart, right? For example, if you go to the tabs here at the top where you have Analyze, you have some calculations, conditional formatting, and hopefully we can get into those tomorrow. Insert, you have a number of icons here where you can insert a pie chart, a bar chart, and so on. And then you also have the display, and it's how you choose to edit what you can display here in the key figures or in the layout of your data. So we go to insert and say, okay, well, I would like to insert a pie chart. And I can simply click on the pie chart, and the pie chart that will be inserted now is really taking the data from what I have added here in analysis 1. And this is where this becomes quite interesting here with the analysis, right? We have analysis 1 at the top, and then by adding the pie chart here at the bottom, immediately this one is called analysis 1, sub-analysis 1. So what that's telling you is that this is a sub-analysis of the data that is in analysis 1. So whatever changes I make to analysis 1 will automatically affect this sub-analysis. Okay, so to avoid these changes, and that's when I simply add a pie chart or any type of graph. You can also select, if you see here, you can also select new analysis or sub-analysis. Now the difference between each one of these, if let's say I want to insert sub-analysis. Now be very careful when you select something. Be careful to see what is selected here in your report. In this case, what is selected, if you see the blue line, is the graph. So I want to select the data here of analysis 1. Okay, so I can say, well, you know what? Insert a sub-analysis. What the system is going to do is add, you see, another analysis. In this case, sub-analysis 2 of analysis 1. So you have the same data as you have it here. The problem with adding sub-analysis is that these analyses are linked, or always going to be linked to this first one here, unless we unlink them, which is what I'm going to show you now. And it's actually your best option. If you wish, for example, if I just close this and say, okay, I already have only one analysis. Instead of a sub-analysis, what I'm going to do is insert a new analysis. And I add a new analysis now. A new window will appear, but if you look at it, it says analysis 2. So it has nothing to do with analysis 1 or the sub-analysis. It is completely unlinked from the other two. So I can start working on it. And actually, if you realize, it has no data at all. It's blank. So you have to start from scratch every time you create a new analysis. That's why maybe it's up to you if you want to just create a new analysis or add a sub-analysis and then unlink it. Okay, so we can close this analysis too. So main difference, right, between the analysis and sub-analysis, or main differences, is exactly that. A new analysis will eventually create a brand new analysis with zero data that you can play with, but also it'll be unlinked, and sub-analysis will be the same data but linked. So you'll have to unlink it. So you see what I'm talking about in terms of linking and unlinking. I'm selecting the analysis 1 sub-analysis here, and I'm going to tell the system that I want to unlink the sub-analysis. And I'm doing that so that if I make changes to this part up here, it will not affect my graph down here. You see, it'll take a while, but once it's unlinked, you'll notice because the name of this section of this field will change. And you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. All right, Sammy. No, thank you actually for the question. Great question. So very useful info for the RNI. Great. That was a very good question, and I'm glad the data was working fine as well when we showed it. Okay, here you go. So now it's called copy of analysis 1. Okay, we can also change the name of this, but I'm going to keep on going with the sub-analysis, and maybe we can show you the change of name tomorrow. All right, so now we have our analysis here, and we can say, all right, I'm going to add a new graph where I'm going to change some data here. So instead of the count of assets, what I want now is the current APC, right? One of the other KPIs we had. So now I'm going to change, and based on the unlinking that I just did now, the only thing that should change is my top section here, and my bottom graph should not change because now it's been unlinked. Okay, very good. So my graph continues to be count assets in transit received, but my data here is now changed to current APC versus the status. Again, I can do the same thing as before. Say, you know what? Well, now I want a clustered column reflecting this information. So it's going to add a new analysis there, see, with the current APC based on the data I have here. Again, I can do the same thing. Select this one and say, you know what? Unlink it from my first analysis. So if I keep changing this analysis, this will not change. So in one quick look, I have the graph or information for the in-transit or received status for the assets that I have. The same thing for the current APC. And now I'm going to do it for my third KPI. So in one quick look, I have 3 graphs that are giving me the information that I need. But for the third graph, I'm going to do it differently. So you guys also know how this can be done differently. All right, so we have copy 2 of analysis 1, copy of analysis 1, and both unlinked. See, the unlinks of analysis are now grayed out. So I can come back to my analysis 1 and say, all right, now, last but not least, I want my KPI process timeline percentage to drive the result of my report here. So again, we have the status, but now instead of current APC, we're going to have the timeline, right? The average, the formula that we were looking at before. And I'm going to transform what I see here in data in a graph. Instead of inserting a graph here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to, as you see here, I'm going to switch this data, and I'm going to transform this one into a clustered bar. So now it's going to change this and display it as a clustered bar. So you see right now I have 1, 2, and 3 analysis, right? The 3 KPIs that we were looking at the beginning in different types of graphs. That, of course, I can also label differently. All right, and I actually went faster than I thought, so I'm going to show you how to label this. So again, you select the section here. Make sure that whatever you selected is here with a blue line. Come to all the way to the left of your report. You see right now we're in data. Data displays the following. If I switch to the one below, okay, let's go back to it. Oh, okay, I went too fast. Switch to the one below. See, now we have the properties of this section that we're in. And you see analysis name 1. So maybe here I can say KPI RNI timeline. And I can apply that to this one. And this name should change. See, KPI RNI timeline. And you just do that for each one of your sections, changing the label of each one of them. Right now it says copy 2. So again, the same thing. And it stays there because I have selected this icon called properties. Before we were in the other one for data. Now I'm in this one for properties. And we changed the name for this one. And we call this one current APC. And click on apply. So you see it's quite easy, but just make sure you're selecting the right section. Copy of analysis, the same thing. We go and we change the name of this one to count assets, and we apply. And now we have each graph, right, with a different name, different section, one not affecting the other because they're all unlinked from each other. Okay, and I see there was no other question. Very good. So again, we were here under properties to change the properties of the name or the labels, in this case, of each one of these sections, of each one of these graphs. You have one more icon that we didn't select yet, which is the outline, which is pretty much showing us the outline of what is here in our report, and which one we have selected right now. As you can see, count of assets. In our sheet 1, sheet 2 has nothing because, of course, sheet 2 is here, so there's nothing there. Tomorrow we'll get into these, and we'll play around a little more. And then data, which shows us this information. If by any chance you ever click on these arrows here, hide, and your data disappears, you can always recuperate it by just clicking on the icon here. Data, and it comes right back. Okay, and of course you could get rid of all the other info you don't need here and just have your graphs. Okay, so that's all I wanted to cover today. And now we can probably just go quickly with the last poll of questions that I have for you guys. And I'm going to take a look at the chat while I launch this poll. Please, if you have any questions, write them on the chat. I'll take a look at them now. So I'm launching this poll. Hopefully you guys are still with me and can take a look at it and can answer these questions. The questions that I'm asking now are the ones related to what we're just seeing now, so you should be able to answer these. And again, sorry, I'm just going to take 4 more minutes of your time, but I think you don't mind. And Cass, maybe I'll go back to you before we close the session, just in case you want to add anything else. But I'm looking at the chat, and now I have one question here. What's the difference between entered on date and posting date? Okay, very good. So that's something we were looking at before, and unless I am mistaken, and I'll ask Cass in a bit, when you select the posting date, right, that is the real date, let's say the date that there was the change of ownership of the goods, while the entered on date here is the date you actually entered it in the system in Umoja. Okay, thank you, Tony. Very good. So I know you're all answering the poll, or at least 50 of you are. Very good, thank you. I believe that we've covered everything that we needed to answer these questions. Now, I know it may seem like a lot of information. I believe that the fact that we went progressively throughout the days, it shouldn't seem like that much. So I know this may be very useful for you to know how to add the graphs and also create sub-analysis as well. So tomorrow we're going to be working a little bit more with an analysis workspace, again, creating graphs, again, inserting pie charts, playing around with our results, also using our sheets as well, and using analysis and compare it to what it does with a sub-analysis and how they affect each other and so on. And hopefully we can also get into some of these calculations and conditional formattings. Okay, so just 2 minutes and 43 seconds to go for the poll, and 25 of you already done, 30 in progress. So thank you guys very much for being active, for asking the right questions. Hopefully we had the right answers. So Cass, I'm going to unmute you again, just in case you want to add anything or close the session with anything in particular.
No. I hope the participants are receiving this training well, and well, thanks to you, Bryan and Cyril, and we'll continue.
All right, thanks, Cass. Actually, thanks to you. Thanks for being here for the 3 sessions, and tomorrow the last one, for answering all the questions. I'm sure your information is very valuable to those listening. So again, thanks for waking up early as well in New York. And we'll see you tomorrow then.
Yep, thanks.
All right, thank you. for the rest of us, as long as the poll keeps going, I'll keep the session open. We have 1 minute and 30 seconds to go, and then we'll close today's session. Again, it's been recording, so I'll transform it into an MP4, and you guys should have it tomorrow in your inbox with a nice YouTube link, also with the answers to these questions that we have performed today. Hope you enjoyed the session, and remember, we're always going to learn something new and different, and the difficulty will increase as the days go by. So tomorrow's our last session, and we'll start playing around with some analysis workspaces again, and get a little more complicated in terms of graphs and other data that we're going to be playing around with. All right, thank you guys. Thanks for the nice comments in the chat. We got 30 seconds to go, and I see at least 55 of you have finished. 2 more in progress. Okay, I hope these questions in the poll are useful for you. I hope I reflect the knowledge that we're gaining throughout the days. Again, sorry for the initial question where I was just saying a yes or no, and the question was a bit more complicated, but I'll get to that one tomorrow and explain it a little better. Okay, and the polling is complete. I'm going to share the correct answers with you guys now and close the session and see you guys tomorrow. Okay, so I've applied the correct questions to the poll. So those of you who want to take a look at it, you can still take a look at it now. If not, nevertheless, as I do every day, I'll just send you guys a list with the correct answers. All right, Fuad, your last comment in the chat was, I don't receive. I guess you mean you don't receive the presentations we send at the end of the day. I would have to check if you're in our list of attendees. Hopefully you are. I believe you are, and if you're not receiving it, then we have an issue with your email. So you can let me know offline. So I'm going to close the session. Thank you all, and see you tomorrow.